A man in Missouri has been sentenced to 20 years in prison after he was found guilty of keeping a sex slave for 6 years straight and raping her every single day. Now, here are some of the important details that you should know about this story. His name is Edward Bagley, and he and his wife recruited this girl to live with them when she was just 16 years old. However, they claim that as soon as she turned 18, she signed a contract indicating that she would be the sex slave of the house. That was when he started to torture her, and not only did he torture her, he got his friends involved and they tortured her as well. Now, prior to her signing the so-called contract, he had her watch BDSM videos and porn, and basically primed her to be into this type of sexual activity. Who knows how she was coerced into signing that document, but she did. And again, for 6 years, she was held captive and raped every single day.
Now, look, if you're not aware with how the law works, you cannot sign a legal, valid contract to be, as this one said, sex slave for life. You can't sign your life away. That's ridiculous, right? Let alone a person who just turned 18. And you're telling me they didn't touch her for all those years while they were together before she was 18. And look, if she had actually signed up for it and now she's like, hey, wait a minute, I was being whipped and put in the dog cage voluntarily, that might be a different question. But she's not saying that. She's saying, no, every day they held me against my will, day after day after day. So this is a no-brainer. In fact, 20 years is far, far too light for this. I mean, taking away somebody's 6 years of their life.
I know. I actually agree with you. The reason why he got 20 years as opposed to a life sentence or anything longer than that is because he took a plea deal. So he pleaded guilty to a number of charges, and as a result, he got a shorter sentence. Now, there were 6 other defendants involved in this. Another one by the name of Brad Cook also got 20 years in prison as a result of his involvement in this. I should also note that both of these people will have to pay $123,000 in restitution to the victim, who is unnamed at this point. Bagley's wife is also going to have to deal with some consequences, but she's not going to have to deal with a long prison sentence, which I think is crazy. I mean, if she was part of this and she recruited this young girl, she should serve some serious prison time as well.
Right. And look, she says, I didn't know this was going to be an everyday thing, right?
Yeah.
Giving you some indication that in the beginning she was interested in this, right? But to give you a sense of how...
16.
No, I know, she was 16. I was going to complete it by saying, but to give you a sense of how uninterested she was in it later, so you get a sense that this was definitely coerced.
The case came to light in early 2009 when the woman, then 23, was hospitalized after what prosecutors said was a torture session. The then U.S. Attorney Beth Phillips called the case one of the most horrific ever prosecuted in the district. And then she continues to say, I will never forget how he laughed, referring to Brad Cook, while I suffered, laughed while I cried and begged. Brad Cook is evil. I can still hear his laughter.
Well, he took a plea deal too, but charges against him included trying to kill her.
Yep.
So, for the people who had any remote idea about whether she was into this or not, if she was into it, then Brad Cook wouldn't try to be killing her, right? So, I'm among the many, many, many reasons why it's super obvious that they actually did keep her against her will as a slave. And for raping somebody and torturing them for 6 straight years, I mean, I know it was a plea deal, but God, you gotta get life for that.
So let me read one more quote that she gave the press. She said, I had no idea he was going to make it an every single night thing. It started bad and got worse and worse.
Yeah, but look, in the end, it is what it is, and that's the way the system works in terms of plea deals. Otherwise, you'd have to go to court, and I'm sure if they went to court, that they would ask for a life sentence, I hope.
There are some states right now that have drug laws that are so strict that you will serve a life sentence if you're caught with a certain amount of hash.
Yeah, I mean, that's what's driving me crazy, and we've talked about this. There was
Yeah.
a guy who smoked pot in one of the states and got a life sentence. There was, of course, the Stephanie George case I keep coming back to, sold $160 worth of drugs and has a life sentence because of 3 strikes. Meanwhile, this guy who raped and imprisoned and tortured this poor girl for 6 straight years gets 20 years. I mean, look, there's great injustice in the country. It's not like this guy is some rich and powerful guy. It's not like he's a banker who got away with things and stuff. But it's just a random injustice. And mainly the problem there is the war on drugs, which gives these insane penalties, right? But in this case, as you look at this case, you think, given everything else, God, this is so low a sentence.
The reason why they take the plea deal is because the victim didn't want to testify and relive the ordeal.
That's true.
Yeah.
So she's like, I just don't want to go through that all over again, testifying and being cross-examined and looking at photos, and it's painful. And keep in mind that a plea deal where you take 20 years, that's a long time.
Yeah.
That means, you're happy to take the 20 years because you're looking at something much, much worse.